What happens when two seasoned business leaders get together? They talk shop, of course. Sit back and listen in as Scott DeLong and Vince Moiso share from their experience around current issues facing executives, entrepreneurs, and their leadership teams. The CEO Podcast starts now.
Hey everybody, Vince Moiso here from the CEO Podcast. I'm here with Scott DeLong, and we've got what I consider to be a hot topic, and I'm excited to talk about it.
An important topic, at least.
Very important topic. We're going to discuss finance, but not just diving deep into the details around finance, specifically around the need to pay attention to it. So as a business owner, as a leader in your business, whether you're a CFO, whether you're a manager, specifically if you've got P&L responsibility, the reasons why you want to pay attention to it, and specifically for those blind spots, and especially if we're talking about getting into trouble, embezzlement, from everything from embezzlement to
inventory,
overspending,
cash.
inventory, cash problems, all these types of things. And I think you got to know your numbers. You've heard it from me before. If you've listened to the podcast, we had a guest not too long ago, Yuko, who is a CPA, and we talked a little bit about numbers. I think we focused a little bit more on her business and the people side of her business more so than the finance. But nonetheless, like hearing from her and other CPAs, had a meeting with a CPA client today, and we talked about the importance of understanding it and really knowing it. And I think if you're a business owner, Scott, I think if you're in a leadership role and you've got P&L responsibility, it's absolutely critical to understand what's going on.
Well, sure. So I've got some examples of where I've done this poorly as well, right? In entrepreneurial businesses, you're always cash strapped and trying to manage cash flow and all of that is actually, when I say manage cash flow in a cash-strapped, bootstrapped organization, you're worried about making payroll. Bottom line, that's the first,
no doubt.
First problem is the payroll. But where we got into trouble, I'm not gonna say trouble, where we let things get out of hand is I was beginning to learn how to empower others, but I didn't put the accountability section on the back half of that.
Yeah.
So I allowed people to get what they needed, what they wanted, not needed, and that got me into a little backward situation for a while.
Sure.
And I can go out in my garage, and this business has been down for a while. Sold it 3 years ago now. I can go out in my garage right now and find all kinds of pieces of equipment that were cool to purchase that weren't needed.
Yeah.
Right now, expensive equipment.
Yeah.
Because we're going to test the waters with things, and the guy that I gave the charge to thought it would be really cool to have a spectrum analyzer. Well, isn't that cool?
How much did you spend on that?
It was like $14,000, and it was never once used in the business, and it's sitting in my garage right now collecting dust.
I'm sure you'd love to get that $14,000 back.
I'd love to get 3,000 of that back right now, but it's so when you talk about knowing your numbers, and we talk about empowering people all the time as well, and if you don't balance those things, you can get into just as much trouble as you can by being this micromanager.
Well, you know what? Empowerment doesn't mean let it go.
No,
right?
it doesn't. It doesn't.
That there's a difference. You can empower people to make decisions and do their job and let them feel fulfilled in what they're doing, and still pay attention at a very, very high level on a very regular basis. You have to be reviewing the P&L statements, your income statement. You have to be able. Let's just start with this for sake of discussion, okay? How about this? I know many small business owners and entrepreneurs that have a fear of finance because they just don't really know how to totally read the numbers.
Sure.
They don't fully understand it. So the go-to is I'm just going to leave it to somebody else. Well, in my opinion, that's a hell of a lot of trust to place into an individual, and whether you're into empowerment or not is irrelevant of this statement. you're talking about the money, the cash flow, the lifeblood of the business, and to completely entrust that to somebody else without any check and balance or accountability is foolhardy, in my opinion. You have to understand what you're looking at. So what I would encourage people to do, and don't be afraid to do this, don't be embarrassed to go do it. It's okay if you don't have that level of financial business acumen. And there are plenty of places for you to learn. Get a coach, get a financial coach. That's a place to start. Go take a class. If you need to take a class.
Executive ed courses all over the place on this.
Go online. I mean, really, there's so much on YouTube. Do a search on YouTube, and there's plenty of video that can teach you how to read your financial statements and how to read reports.
Let's take a step back, because I want to go to the empowerment, because I don't want to get off of that yet, because we both believe in that, empowering people. Mikhail Gorbachev just died, and you saw that in the news or not, but
I did not see that in the news.
So he and Reagan
were
working on tearing down the wall, and Gorbachev got the credit for doing that. Reagan got a lot of credit on this side, but Ronald Reagan said something that was great, especially when this semi-adversarial relationship that they had back then. Trust, but verify.
I remember that.
Right? Yeah. Trust, but verify. So we can empower people, and we can entrust them in things that does not abdicate my responsibilities to manage my cash, my P&L, balance sheet, any of that, right?
All of it.
It's all important to do. Trust, but verify. That's not micromanaging.
It's not at all.
Right.
No, I love that. I think you hit it there, and you do have to verify, and that is that level of accountability that we're talking about with the numbers. You can't turn your back on it. I think that's the point that we're making. You can't turn a blind eye to it. You can't turn your back on it. You have to know it, and you have to understand it. And I think what I have experienced is I've experienced business owners that don't know it, so they ignore it. And I think that's probably one of the worst things that you could possibly do. You've got to get yourself into the know so that you're comfortable enough that you can sit down with whoever you're empowering or entrusting with the finances of your company and have an intelligent conversation to understand what it is that you're looking at, and you can direct them accordingly.
And manage ratios. What should payroll look like, right?
Yeah.
Percentage of revenue, percentage of profit. Figure out what your numbers are and manage to those numbers. So we talk about leadership here all the time. And again, that does not advocate management. You need both. We need leaders that can entrust, empower, inspire, but we also need to manage our business as well. And there's a balance in there, right, between the micromanage and the manage and the leadership and all of that. But do not advocate the responsibilities on the financial statement. Even if you are not a financial expert, know enough to be able to check in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You got to control your trust? Wonderful. I love it.
Well, I think
know what they're doing.
One of the topics I'd like to really hone in on in this discussion is around overspending. And
I'm good at that.
Yeah, it's easy to do. You gave the example of your spectrometer, and you spent $14,000 and you never used it. And I think everybody can relate to that.
Yep.
I think we've all bought something in the business,
multiple things
in the business, and we didn't really need it. And that's what I'm talking about with overspending. And I know in my experience in owning multiple tile businesses, right, in the tile world, we tend to overspend on R&D. It's the next great thing, and you end up spending a boatload of money on getting samples and putting samples together, designing this color and that color, and you're running production for a product that you're not going to sell yet, or you're months and months away because the sales cycle is so long.
Just getting ready for a trade show.
And you get excited. You almost get. It's intoxicating, and you get a little punch drunk. The other thing is inventory.
Marketing is the same, right? You get punch drunk on the marketing expenses.
Without a doubt. Like I'm a super stickler. My poor marketing folks must have a hard time working with me because
no comment.
We work on a shoestring budget, and I'm probably the harshest on marketing than I am any other department. And I agree with your statement. And when things get tough, marketing is one of the first things to go.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I don't believe in that. Okay. That being said, the other thing is inventory. When you talk about overspending, I think inventory, and again, I'll use the tile industry as an example. I watched my business partners in my previous business just get punch drunk on ordering inventory, and you can't help it. No judgment.
Right.
I don't blame those that do. I'll just give you the example. You go to Italy and you get wined and dined, and you're sitting in the heart of the quarry where Michelangelo pulled the white block of marble out to carve the statue of David, or so the Italians tell you, right? Yeah. I mean, they're romancing the stone unbelievably.
You're going to get the story.
Next thing you know, you've ordered 2 truckloads of product for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and by the time they show up, you're like, oh shit.
And Michelangelo doesn't work in your building.
It's going to take me a year or more to sell this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what was I thinking? But you get caught up in the moment, and it's easy to do. Stone and tile can be, really a sexy product from a design perspective, and it's easy to get caught up in. I have a client in that industry as well, where I'm constantly trying to reel him back on purchases as much as possible. So inventory, and I don't care what I am using tile as the example, and I don't care what it is. If you're in distribution or you're in manufacturing, inventory is an easy thing to get lost in.
Well, yes, and we have the compounding issue, though, of supply chain problems, too. So you've had people, I just watched a story a few weeks ago. Target, Walmart are now getting their Christmas merchandise from last year, about 2 months ago. Right?
No, it is.
Right.
And you're seeing massive sales go on as a result of that.
Absolutely. So you mentioned this in the podcast we did on economics, is that when you have this excess inventory, dump it, get the cash. Well, yeah, no, and it sends such a strange message, and I am a believer in that. When you've got inventory for a certain amount of time, you got to get rid of it and turn it into cash. I mean, that's the whole point of it. You have to get over what you paid for it sometimes and just generate cash. That being said, I mean, that's just, again, going back to the importance of understanding that income statement and looking at the right reports. So that takes me back to, do you have the right accounting software? Right. What are you using, and have you built the right reports? And is the input of information into that accounting software, which is arguably the most important part of that, because the old adage, shit in, shit out, right? Is if you're not putting the right information in, then the information you get back out isn't going to be very good either. Not reliable.
So it's critical that if you're using QuickBooks, a lot of people use QuickBooks,
right.
and QuickBooks is great. And actually QuickBooks produces incredible reports, again, which are all based on the information that you've put in. So you've got to have the right people in the right place that's putting that good information into the system, so that when you pull a sales report by item or by customer or whatever it might be, so that you can actually review and dive into the details of your business and understand, are you selling at the right price? Are my margins accurate? Do I have enough flow, right, to operate this business? And then, if you're scratching your head at the end of each month because you're in the red and you don't understand why you're in the red, you have a problem.
Well, sometimes what ends up being is that because people try to overanalyze things, what I'm going to suggest is measure what matters. You don't have to measure every little detail. Well, somebody needs to be measuring the details, but you as the business owner have to understand the things that are going to matter and manage to those. So you're if you're looking at minute things that don't matter, you get 80% margin on a product you sell $10 a month on, doesn't do you a bunch of good, right?
No.
So understanding what numbers that you are looking for in order to create the reports that you need.
Absolutely.
And then verify that they're being input properly, so that the numbers come out appropriately, right? And accurately. All that's important. So let's talk, you mentioned earlier something about embezzlement.
Yeah.
I always thought that was difficult to do. Come to find out, it's not. I had a situation 32 years ago. Went to work for a company before I started my second business. In between, I was working for a company in charge of the distribution portion of the company, and they had a president of the organization that wasn't a family member. This was a family-run business. This guy wasn't a family member. Brought him in because he was super smart.
Yeah.
Great. Well, he put together a scheme with a printer. He had a printer buddy up in the Bay Area that we sent all our printing to at twice the price of what it would have cost to get done in San Diego. And he and the printer partner split the profit. And it took the company a year and a half to figure it out.
And how'd they figure it out?
So they figured it out because they saw the printing costs were way out of line. They had a board of directors, and once a year they would look at the numbers. In the first 6 months, it didn't show up. But after the year and a half, it came out like, what the hell are we spending all this on? And the guy goes, oh, marketing stuff, and we're doing this and we're doing that. And they started digging into it and got some local quotes. So the board of directors actually did this. They went out and got a few local quotes for the kind of work that we were getting done and realized they were being charged twice the market rate. So got the cops involved, got it all figured out what was happening, and the printer actually spilled the beans on the president of the company.
Wow.
No checks and balances is the story there. Like,
wow.
Imagine, right? There's just, it's not just the errant check that goes out to somebody else, but this guy created a scheme that a legitimate business expense. He found his preferred vendor because this guy did great work.
Yeah.
Trust my guy. And they had a scheme, and they just hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow. Yeah, that makes me sad. I'm sad that there are human beings that would even do that in the first place.
Yeah.
And it does make me sad for the business that it took that long to figure it out. It shouldn't take that long.
It shouldn't.
It shouldn't take that long.
But the board was only looking at numbers, really digging in once a year. They had quarterly meetings, but it was all fluff and bullshit meetings. So,
but accounting can be overwhelming. So let's just call a spade, and I will say this because, I want to go back to this topic about, not to the topic, but just the comment that I made around if you're inputting bad information into the system, then you're going to get bad information out. And so if you're dropping the wrong thing in the wrong bucket in accounting, you're not going to see things like that.
It's not hard to do either.
No, it isn't, and that's what's bad. So if you're not scrutinizing the accounting itself, you could have a problem, exactly like what you just described. And I bet I could see how it happened, because if you're looking at a high level profit and loss statement, an income statement, I mean, you're simply, it could be broken down as simply like top line revenue, cost of goods sold, your income, total expenses, net income, and then anything else that may go below that. But it could be as simple as that.
In this case, printing is lobbed in with marketing,
Yeah.
and we're trying to grow the business, and marketing went up. Great, fine, understood.
But you don't know what it is.
You don't know what it is.
Yeah, you've got to dive in. So what I look for, things that I look for. First of all, I would never look at a income statement that was only that, like that rudimentary. I would always want details, especially around expenses and cost of goods sold. So I'd want to understand what's going into cost of goods sold and what's being included in that, so I can really understand what the real margin is. Secondarily, on expenses, I at least want, okay, well, what's the rent expense? What's the marketing expense? What's the sales expense? What's payroll? What's all of the key components of what you're spending. You're going to want to, at a bare minimum, understand that level of detail. Now, once you get that level of detail, that's when things might stand out to you.
Sure.
So in your example, if it was all lumped into a marketing bucket, that marketing expense might be a little higher than normal.
Because we're marketing.
And that may cause you to ask a question. Hey, can I get some detail around those marketing expenses? I see that our marketing expenses went up 40%, and maybe that's justified, but I would just like to take a look at those so we can get on the same page, right? So something to that effect. But that's where you're really going to be able to dive in and find out what the heck is going on.
Yeah, well, I was in a service business for the last two companies that I've had. So my biggest number was payroll, right? Sales and then regular payroll as well. And that's where I really managed hard to that. And that's more difficult these days as well, because the payroll's going up right? The percentage of
It
payroll as a percentage of the business, payroll numbers are going up, and can you justify them? Or is some guy inflating whatever salary? The checks and balances is what I'm getting about here. Right.
It can that your embezzlement example is a good one, Scott, because it can happen in a lot of different places.
All kinds of areas.
It can happen under marketing. It can happen under sales. I mean, another place that I've experienced it, and I wouldn't call it embezzlement, but I'd chop it up to overspending, right? And then you just move on from folks like this, but they get the company credit card. The sales teams and the marketing teams, and they're going to events and they're spending $1,000 on dinners and things like that. So. Again, like if you don't have a budget and you're just giving somebody a company card and they don't have the respect to treat it like their own, that's a problem.
So
right?
not just a budget, but a process.
You gotta have a process. Like I have a policy. I have a system built around what the expectations are. At the beginning of the year, we build a very specific budget, the why, the when, and there's parameters around what those expenditures are. And I try to be as explicit as possible around it because, unfortunately, you have to give people those guidelines. Otherwise, if you just hand somebody a blank check, what do you expect?
They'll take it.
I mean, just point the finger inward at that point because you handed somebody a blank check.
So let's go to your philosophy on the guidelines and structure and all of that. Exceptions can be made or not?
But yeah, that require approval.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
You need to manage your business.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's not really difficult to do.
No, it's not.
But it can happen. You mentioned a funny thing too is payroll, and I think every entrepreneur can relate to trying to make payroll, right? Yeah. I mean, cash flow is one of the most challenging things in a business, especially a growing business. So payroll can be challenging,
and that's not the one you can fudge for a few days.
No, you can't. Well, here's what happens though. And so again, I think it's typically unintentional. So again, I don't think we're going into embezzlement, but I think it's the trap that a lot of businesses fall into is you're growing your business, it starts to get overwhelming and you just start throwing bodies.
Right.
Instead of really taking a step back and looking at your business as a whole, trying to figure out how the organizational structure is working, do some strategic planning or whatever that might be to get your business focused in the right way, you just start throwing people at it, and next thing you know, your payroll gets completely out of control and you're scratching your head wondering, how the heck did I get to this place?
Yeah.
And it's the recourse is difficult because you've overspent for months at that point, and now you're in a position where you have to start cutting a lot of people, and that gets challenging.
Challenge is a good word, especially in California. So cutting people in California is just not as easy as saying, we can't afford you this week. Right? No. It's much more detailed than that. So that's why I keep coming back to payroll. And I get it. I wasn't in the manufacturing or distribution businesses as much. So I didn't have to worry nearly as much as inventory. But my tools and parts and things like that certainly got out of hand because somebody wanted a cool new thing and I let them do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think every department has to have its check and balance. When I came into the business 6 years ago, what is a glass manufacturing and glass tile business you would have thought was an IT business. So I came in and I was kind of wondering, what the heck is going on here? I mean, there was like 6 IT people and just a really sophisticated hardware system and a very, very sophisticated ERP system.
Always building new software.
Yeah, and I was like, holy cow, are we in IT? We're down to not even close that level of IT, and we've trimmed it to where it should be, frankly, and we've done a good job of that. Good. And now it's where it needs to be. And that's how quickly it happens. Like, it was nobody's fault.
Sure.
No one did anything wrong. It was just simply it kept feeling like there was that level of need for the business when there really wasn't.
In a small entrepreneur business, a person here and a person there adds up pretty quick.
It does. Well, I know, and you get. I think it's easy to get convinced that you have to have.
Sure.
And then that's when you buy the spectrometer for $14,000 and never use it, right?
Thank you.
Just saying.
Let's keep going with that one. I can go ahead and turn it on right now.
Yeah,
You wanna go
it's
see it?
it's
just
good.
sitting right out
Man.
there.
That's gold. I'm using that in the next like 3 podcasts at least.
Wonderful. I love being here for you.
I'm so happy that you told me that story. Scott.
Yeah. Well, there are more stories like that.
Keep them coming.
That was the most egregious one tool part that was bought because it was fun.
Hey, listen, man. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone.
Well,
so no judgment. I've made my mistakes with purchases. There's no question. So
yeah, well, you can go out in my garage and find more stuff too. There's that chopper that you like was a business
that was
purchase
a good one too.
That we needed for trade shows.
I recall the trade show trade show description. So I think you got your money's worth.
I got my money's worth out of it. If you talk to my wife today and it's still sitting in the garage, she'll say, "When are you getting rid of that thing?"
She thinks differently about it.
She definitely thinks differently about it. But it was a cool purchase. That one's on me. No one else did that to me. That's one I did for myself. We had a custom built chopper, and it was beautiful, and it got attention at trade shows.
It is beautiful. It's still beautiful.
Did its job.
Yeah.
However, did a telecommunications company really need a custom built chopper?
Of course they did.
Sure they did.
Of course they did.
Yeah.
Well, listen. I mean, you could watch. You know, one of the latest documentaries you could watch is WeWork, and I think it's I don't know if that's on Netflix. I can't remember, but anyway, I mean that's just the classic example of the overspend and then trying to fudge accounting. I mean, you can. I'm trying to think of the other documentary on HBO, the medical device. So the woman that came out of Stanford. I don't know why I'm blanking on her name right now, but you know that's another one where you just start to fudge the accounting and you're overspending and things like that. And it's easy to get excited. It's easy to get intoxicated about a business, and it is actually a lot easier than people think to overspend, which is why we circle right back to exactly what we were saying in the beginning and the whole basis of this particular podcast episode, which is pay attention. Pay attention to your numbers.
Fundamentals matter.
Fundamental finance. Right. You got to pay attention. You got to be able to read those financial statements. You got to be able to read the reports. You got to be putting out the right reports. You got to be getting the right information into your software so that you get good information out and you can pay attention to the business. And in addition, I love what you said earlier, Scott, because another takeaway for me in what you said, and I really like it, which is that level of accountability, right? Trust but verify is what you said.
Yep.
Trust but verify. And that's the level of accountability that should be expected from a leader in the business, whether you're CFO, COO, if you're the owner of the business, president, all you guys, anyone that has P&L responsibility has that level of responsibility.
So I've got a friend that runs a business, and he's a marketing savant. The products galore, ideas coming out of a typical entrepreneur guy, didn't know anything about finance. And his coach really pushed him to learn the finance piece. And I push back a little bit and say, what I want you to do is learn enough to know the questions to ask.
Great.
I don't want you getting bogged down in numbers so that you lose your creativity, that you lose your passion, that you lose the things that have made you what you are. But you have to know enough to be able to look at things and ask questions about those things, and then understand the answers. Right? Understand the answers. But I don't know that you need to go away from your core strengths. But this is a strength that every business owner, CEO, CFO, COO, needs to understand how to read some numbers.
Well, I like what you said. I mean, you should know at least enough to be dangerous. And you've got to be able to know it to have an intelligent conversation. You can hire somebody much better than you that can handle the details and dive deep into it. And you should be able to know enough to have that intelligent conversation to direct them accordingly and hold them accountable, trust but verify. Scott, I mean, straight up, I'll tell you what I did. I got to a level where I was frustrated with not really there came a point in time in my previous business that I didn't feel like I was in the conversation. I was in the meetings.
The financial conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was in the meetings, but I didn't feel like I was really in the conversation. I went and got my MBA. And I focused on finance. And I came out a completely new person. And it opened up an entirely new world for me. In fact, I moved on from that business after that, and it opened up a new world. Once I understood it, it wasn't even, I wouldn't have called it my strength at the time, but it definitely has become a strength of mine, and I actually enjoy it, and I like it, which is why I'm so passionate about it when I'm talking about it. So I'm not suggesting that everybody follow that path.
I'm going to say that.
Go get your MBA.
You don't need to go to that depth. There are courses. There was one at Berkeley that I was involved in. It was called something financial acronym for non-financial leaders.
Yeah.
Right. Gives you enough information that you can challenge what you're looking at.
Finance for Dummies.
Kinda. Yeah.
That is one of those dummies book, by the way. Is Finance
do they
for
have one?
Dummies. Yeah.
I haven't read that.
Yeah. I have.
All right, cool. Well, anyway, if you haven't got the point yet, it is not. Yes, we're all about empowerment. We're all about allowing people to do their things, and at the same time, the buck stops here. Terry S. Truman had that on his desk. The buck stops here. It is your responsibility to know. If you don't know, and throw up your hand and say, "Well, I didn't know." I mean, we got some of that going on in the political world right now. I don't know. The CFO handled that for me.
Well, what's up with the presidential quotes? First Reagan, now Truman.
Well, these are old presidents. I relate. Yeah.
Don't tell me you were around, dude. Don't even go there. You already said 32 years ago with your business.
Well. So at least I'm not going to old Supreme Court quotes anymore.
I'll take it. Okay, we're good. Hey guys, listen. Couple nuggets from this is I think there's a lot of resources out there from YouTube to books to case studies to all sorts of stuff. I think one of the simplest thing a business could do, whether you're an entrepreneur, COO, CFO, get a coach.
Get a coach.
Yeah, just get a coach. I think that's one of the simplest things you can do is get somebody to show you the do's and the don'ts and what you should be paying attention to so that you can follow this mantra of trust but verify. I think if there's any one takeaway, that's it. Pay attention.
Yep, pay attention. It is your responsibility. You can't advocate that at all. It's your money.
Yeah.
Do something with it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks. This was a good topic. We're going to go deeper on this. In fact, we talked a little bit about embezzlement, but we think we're going to go a little bit deeper in an upcoming episode on embezzlement and get some true life stories. Mine was true, but happened to somebody. This happened to somebody else.
Well, I think embezzlement goes deeper than what we were talking about, right? So I think you can have the wrong financial person in your business that can actually steal money, versus overspend or doing a deal with a vendor or an inventory situation.
So we're going to dig deep into that.
I'm talking about, hiring a CFO that just flat out steals from you. And I think that's where we want to go with an experience share with a future guest. So stay tuned for that. As always, thank you for listening. You can check us out on all the usual channels. YouTube, watch us on YouTube if you prefer to watch. You can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere else they listen to podcasts. And we thank you for listening. Until next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining us for the CEO Podcast. Please visit us at theceopodcast.net, where you can learn more about our co-hosts and listen to past episodes. If you would like to have a discussion and dive deeper into any topic, there is also an option to contact Scott or Vince to schedule some time with them. Thanks for listening.